That is Samuel Barber, Adagio for Strings. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The House is expected to overwhelmingly vote today to condemn a UN inquiry that found Israel committed scores of war crimes in its 3-week assault on the Gaza Strip. The report, headed by the South African jurist Richard Goldstone, also accused Hamas of war crimes and said both sides should investigate the allegations or face international prosecution. Over 1,300 Palestinians were killed in the Israeli attack, a majority of them civilians. 9 Israelis were killed, 3 by so-called friendly fire. The bipartisan, non-binding House measure calls the Goldstone inquiry, quote, irredeemably biased and unworthy of further consideration or legitimacy. The vote comes one day before the United Nations General Assembly is expected to take up the inquiry's findings. The vote also comes as the Obama administration is under criticism for backing off its previous demands that Israel halt settlement expansion in the occupied West Bank. Israel is refusing to halt construction of about 3,000 West Bank houses or any construction in occupied East Jerusalem. On Saturday, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton announced the reversal after meeting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
What the Prime Minister is saying is historically accurate. There has never been a precondition. It's always been an issue within the negotiations. What the Prime Minister has offered in specifics of a restraint on the policy of settlements, which he has just described, no new starts, for example, is unprecedented in the context of prior to negotiations.
Clinton's comments drew criticism from Palestinian and other Arab leaders. Speaking in Morocco Monday, Clinton tried to address those concerns, now adding that Israeli pledges to restrain settlement growth are, quote, not enough.
They will build no new settlements, expropriate no land, allow no new construction or approvals. And let me just say, this offer falls far short of what we would characterize as our position or what our preference would be. But if it is acted upon, it will be an unprecedented restriction on settlements and would have a significant and meaningful effect on restraining their growth. And let me just take a step back, because I want to put this into the broader context. I will offer positive reinforcement to the parties when I believe they are taking steps that support the objective of reaching a two-state solution. I will also push them, as I have in public and in private, to do even more.
As Israel continues to build new homes for settlers, it's also defying U.S. demands to halt the destruction of Palestinian homes in East Jerusalem. Around 30 Palestinians were displaced in home demolitions last week. According to the UN, as many as 60,000 Palestinians in East Jerusalem are at risk of forced evictions, demolitions, and displacement. We're joined right now by 2 guests here in our firehouse. Micha Kurtz is the co-founder of the group Breaking the Silence, an organization of veterans of the Israeli Defense Forces that collects testimonies from Israeli soldiers speaking out about their conduct in the occupied Palestinian territories. Now he's coordinator of Grassroots Jerusalem, an organization mapping grassroots activities in and around Jerusalem. And on the phone with us from Israel is Jeff Halper, an Israeli peace activist and scholar, coordinator of the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions. I want to begin with you, Jeff, in Israel. Talk about this non-binding resolution that's expected to pass in the House condemning the Goldstone report. You just came from the United States.
Yeah, I just came from the United States, and I just came from a week of meeting with members of Congress and the administration in Washington. You know, it's very distressing, of course, because in the entire world, Israel relies on the United States as really its only firm supporter. The United States is the patron of Israel. But it's not really the administration, it's Congress that's Israel's trump card. In other words, Israel says it can circumvent the president. It can circumvent the administration by going directly to Congress. And Netanyahu works the phones all the time with Congress. So in a sense, it's a kind of divide and rule. And when I was in Congress, I was telling members of Congress, you have to understand that you're being used by Israel as a kind of as a trump card against your own administration, preventing the American government from presenting a coherent policy, speaking in one voice. And I think that you really see that in a way I would consider that a gross violation of the internal, a gross intervention in the internal affairs of the United States, which would seem to be should get all members of Congress upset, no matter what their stand is.
I'm looking at a Human Rights Watch statement on this, saying members of the House of Representatives should oppose a resolution that calls for the Obama administration to reject scrutiny of Israel and Hamas. This House Resolution 867, calling on the U.S. President and Secretary of State to oppose unequivocally any endorsement or further consideration of the report of the United Nations fact-finding mission on the Gaza conflict. Jeff Halper, how has it been received in Israel? I mean, Judge Goldstone, well-known jurist from South Africa, also a Zionist. His daughter was talking on Israeli radio and talking about his significance and his Zionism.
Right. Well, I think it's been received here very, very hard, because it's really the first time that Israel's, maybe except the International Court of Justice decision on the wall, that Israel's been held accountable for its actions. And of course, Israel always presents itself as being the victim. And Israel is defending itself against terrorism and all of that. So the fact that an important figure like Goldstone, through the UN, says no, that Israel is the attacker, Israel's the aggressor, Israel used a disproportionate amount of force, and that was the violation. That's what made it a war crime, the attack on Gaza, is something that really is much more important than simply Israel going before the International Criminal Court. It means that Israel's entire image as this little democratic Jewish victim of the conflict is being called into question, and Israel's being held accountable as the strong party for its actions. And that, I would say, is the greatest threat to Israel, because once it can be held accountable by Goldstone, then the dam has burst, and Israel will have trouble defending any of its policies anywhere.
And the significance of this resolution, if passed in the United States, for the rest of the world, for Israel and the rest of the world?
Well, when I say, when I told members of Congress that I met, I don't think they understand, and I don't think the American people understand how much human rights means to the rest of the world. This is the hope of peoples all over the world to get out of oppression, to get some kind of parity, to be included in the world. Human rights really means something, and it's something that's meant to protect powerless people against governments and corporations as well, actually. So that it means a lot. So when the United States stands against clear violations of human rights by Israel, I think this isolates the United States in a much broader sense from the world. It isn't only Israel and the U.S. alone in the UN voting against everybody else, but it really, I think, completely compromises any American credibility in the world as trying to foster democracy or trying to even to be a part of the world. It really shows how disconnected the United States is from the concerns of people everywhere, including Europe. So I think I don't think the Americans understand what it means to go against human rights. I think they feel human rights are anti-American. They somehow trump American exceptionalism. But I think the United States really has to reevaluate its stand in general in terms of enforcement of human rights all over the world.
Jeff Halper speaking to us from Israel. They're an Israeli peace activist, coordinator of the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions. Mika Kurtz, you're traveling here in this country. You're a veteran of the Israeli Defense Forces. You co-founded the group Breaking the Silence. Israeli soldiers talking about what they did in Gaza during this assault. Explain what you found.
Breaking the Silence was founded close after the Second Intifada, in 2004. we were talking about mostly what it means for soldiers, not as much what it means for Palestinians, but what it means to send 18, 19-year-olds into occupied territories, controlling other human beings and making that a routine reality for us, for everyone who goes to the army. And in Israel, everyone goes to the army. Women go in for 2 years, men go in for 3, and all of it's when we're 18. What we were doing back then didn't have anything to do with the Goldstone report. It was a self-check on what's going on in Israeli mainstream morality. What's the price we're paying for occupying these territories and controlling these people?
Share some of the testimony. Talk about your own experience. When did you serve?
I served during the Second Intifada, a lot of time in Hebron, and a lot of what we were doing in Hebron it turned out it was as protecting the settlers.